Welcome, everyone. My name is Marnie Fletcher. I work for the CAGBC. CAGBC is celebrating its 20th anniversary with green leaders who played a major role in establishing the organization. Today, we sit down with an architect, a Canada Clean 50 honoree, and a lead fellow who has given so much to the industry in general and CAGBC in particular. Joanne Purdue is recognized as a Canadian innovator and collaborator in capacity building for sustainability and climate action leadership. She is an ardent supporter of preparing future leaders and of empowering women to accelerate the transformation to a sustainable future. Over the last 20 years, she's been involved with CAGBC's technical advisory groups, lead product steering committee, in addition to co-founding the Alberta chapter and serving on the board of directors. Thank you for being with us today, Joanne.
Oh, thank you, Marnie, for having me here today. It's really my honor to have the opportunity to have our conversation today. I really my appreciation to the CAGBC for this opportunity.
Great. Joanne, as one of the early founders of CAGBC, can you tell us how you became involved?
Oh, yeah, that's a question that takes me back over 20 years. Prior to the founding of the Canada Green Building Council, there were several smaller groups across the country that were actively engaged in really trying to advance green building and green building advocacy, but at regional levels. So, for example, I was in the 90s, I was co-chair of the Architectural Institute of British Columbia's Energy and Environment Committee, and that was, in Vancouver. And this was a group comprising architects and engineers and other allied professionals that were very interested in green buildings. And we were doing a lot of work back then to try to kind of create that case for change, if you will. There was advocacy work. We were working with the city of Vancouver on then their first energy bylaw. We were doing work to try to get some sustainability guidelines embedded in kind of the requirements for the Southeast Falls Creek plans. This is well before, of course, it was ultimately developed through the Olympic Village with sustainability principles, but it sort of goes back there. So there was all of this, this great work occurring. And I think when the CAGBC was founded, I mean, a lot of that was around, okay, how do we develop a lead and bring it to Canada? But equally important was providing this forum to bring, to kind of integrate these different groups that were working in different regions across Canada to kind of scale up kind of a green building advocacy network that, became now a national network. And that's sort of that forum that the CAGBC provided. And at that time, when the CAGBC was first founded, there were only a handful of staff members. Alex Zimmerman was the CEO, and Ian Baker, was working with Alex. And but what occurred then is that all of these people who had been working regionally were then focusing their efforts to help the CAGBC develop. And so all of the heavy lifting that needed to occur to develop the lead, to lead products and the certification systems and so forth, all of that work, needed to be done. And that was really done on volunteerism and kind of bringing all of these regional groups into kind of that national kind of community of practice. And of course, as you mentioned in your opening, over that first decade, I was involved with so many different committees that were, along with so many others that were really working to kind of establish that foundation of the CAGBC. So.
Yeah, so you mentioned, in the 90s, you were working to integrate these green building principles into projects. So I'm wondering, what impact did CAGBC have on that work? What did growing into more of a national network, what did that provide you with as a practitioner?
Yeah, well, I think that, again, before we had the CAGBC and before we had new products, we had to kind of figure out, okay, well, what did it mean to do a green building? And so it was those early projects that actually started to themselves define what could a green building be, and in many ways, I think, informed and shaped what LEED became. And I would say, for myself, there were different projects that I was working on that I think really, I had the great opportunity to work on. that helped to inform that. And, one of those, well, two of them at UBC, the VU Center and the CK Choi building, and that CK Choi building then became one of those really transformative projects that, I think after that was finished, UBC had to hire people to handle all of the people that were coming to see and to learn about it. What do green buildings look like? Because there was such an appetite. There was this growing momentum, and it's just sort of like going a little bit down memory lane. But I don't know. To me, it's kind of an interesting story to see what is it that kind of that preceded, that kind of enabled then the CAGBC and the USGBC to kind of gain the momentum that they had. Because there were no, before LEED, we had no reference guides. There was no frameworks to say what this meant. So we need to undertake research. We would deliberate, the community to say, well, you could do this, but no, there'd be a problem. And so, well, maybe we could try, this way or that way. But a lot of things occurred in the 90s that really set that stage, under the leadership of Susan Maxman, who was an architect and the president of the American Institute of Architects. She led the foundation of the AIA's Committee on the Environment, which became a real powerhouse that, I think really fed into the LEED and the USGBC as it eventually kind of came to be. But that was back kind of in the early 90s, and they developed the environmental resource guide saying, okay, well, material health, what does that mean, and what do we need to consider, all these things. Publications like Environmental Building News with Nadav Milan and Alex Wilson of getting these kind of publications out to say, well, it's like different aspects of whether, comparing different insulation products and their ecological footprint and so forth. So we really needed all of those resources. And I would say, one of the really I think powerful things is that this kind of community of kind of sharing knowledge, because we weren't as big then, and so there was a lot of sharing. And in the early 90s, there was a convening in Chicago of an international convening with 3,000 architects and allied professionals that came together for a conference called Architecture at the Crossroads. And out of that came something called Declaration of Interdependence for a Sustainable Future, that was specific to the built environment. And that, we brought that back to BC, and we had the Architectural Institute of British Columbia endorse this, and the RAIC, Royal Architectural Institute of Canada, endorsed it. So this kind of all fed into, I think this momentum, this movement that was underway. And then with the foundation of the founding of the CAGBC, that it like gave this catalyst. The CAGBC became this kind of place to channel all that energy into, and then move from kind of, I'm going to say, these kind of one-offs or niche areas to really start to scale it up. And I think that's the piece that the CAGBC brought, is the council brought that ability to really scale this and to start to take this this movement to just kind of give it the fuel that it needed to grow.
Right. Joanne, your involvement with CAGBC has spanned all phases of the organization's growth over the last 20 years. What have been the most significant changes that you've seen?
The council has just transformed so much. There's been so many different changes, and I think if I were to hone in on one thing, I think it's this concept. And again, that perspective of sort of the early years to where we are now, is that this idea that we can start with this really big idea, this big powerful idea, and that with bringing good people together, and that willingness to kind of work collaboratively on an idea that's bigger than any one of us individually, that ability to really transform this built environment. And so we've gone from kind of this idea, this big idea, to this nationwide council that has 14,000 members and over 3 million square meters of certified LEED certified space, right? And I think all of the different ways in which green building standards and practices have been adopted across so many different jurisdictions in Canada. That could never have been done by any kind of individual or regional group. And so that's to me, that's that big transformative idea. And it has application going forward to say, what are our big ideas that we have now that we could think forward 20 more years, and what could we achieve with that? So I think about that a lot. And I think about Alex Zimmerman as the first CAO. I think at one point he had a desk in his garage that he was working from when, because when they were first, there's no funding initially, right? And then moving to, I think, the REIC gave them, an office, and then just thinking about where we are now. And so both Thomas and Alex have been really amazing leaders that have, really kind of visionary leaders to think about how to take these ideas and really transform them. So to me, that's what really jumps out.
One thing that we've noticed is how Canada's post-secondary institutions seem to consistently be leaders in this industry. Under your guidance, the University of Calgary is among the top in the country. So how do you consistently sell through green building and build consensus to bring the next level of sustainability?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't, I've never characterized my role as selling green buildings. I think of it more as kind of, it's about change leadership, right? And it's that kind of convening people and around kind of big ideas, and a lot of kind of educational kind of piece of it there. But what I would say, one of the things that some people may not know that may be listening is that post-secondary education institutions in Canada are actually leaders in sustainability. So under the Times Higher Education, which is they have a ranking tool called the University Impact Ranking, and it evaluates the university for their progress in advancing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So Canadian institutions as a cohort are the third highest ranked country globally for progress in advancing sustainability as evaluated through the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm really proud that University of Calgary actually has been ranked among top 5% of global institutions for the past 3 years. So this is, but my U15 university colleagues are also right up there too. And this is a really powerful thing for Canada, and I'm so proud to see Canada so strong in this way. But I would say, I think post-secondary institutions, they have elevated responsibilities and sustainability in three really key ways. And one is that we support students in developing core competencies and knowledge to address what are seemingly intractable, highly complex, there's social ecological problems, and we have a responsibility to help prepare young people to go into the world in all kinds of different disciplines with the knowledge they need to be able to address these challenges. We also have, second, we also have this, we are research institutions, and we have diverse disciplinary expertise that we can convene around these intractable challenges that we are facing, and we need diverse disciplinary expertise because no one discipline on its own can solve this very large challenge that we have. And I guess the third way that universities play an important role is the campuses themselves, that we can be these living labs, these learning labs for understanding what sustainability looks like on the ground. And as campuses, we're not doing it one building at a time. We're doing it as an eco district or a sustainability district, if you will. And so we have that ability to do that. We model this for our students, our faculty, our staff, and we also model it for the community. And I like to think that every time we do a great green building on our campus, all of those professionals that support us in industry, they're also advancing their experience and their knowledge right from the designers right through to the constructors and building that capacity. So for our university, we have our institutional sustainability strategy. It sets our framework. It's our strategies. It's like a multi-year. We're on year 8 of that strategy. And underneath, so that's our roadmap that sets our aspirations and our goals for sustainability. It helps to integrate a large campus community of 40,000 Underneath that, we also have our climate action plan. So that kind of sets our trajectory of where we're going. And then, green buildings are and helping ecosystems and all of our climate action initiatives all sit within that. And that's an area of strength. I'd say I'm really proud that we were one of the we were one of the early the McKinney complex is one of the early projects to be certified under the CAGBC zero carbon building standard for design. And I'm super proud that it was actually the retrofit of an existing building. We also were one of the first universities in Canada to get to achieve a LEED Platinum certification back in 2007. So we've had this long history of practice. And I would say, so what's behind some of that success and being able to kind of sustain that focus over time. And I think, if I'm just honing in on the green building part of it, is that first of all, is that we really work to integrate kind of our diverse strengths as a research institution and a learning institution into kind of our commitment to the project and look for the innovation that we can do with that. So in our projects, we have students doing life cycle assessments of might be specific materials. It can be whole building. We have all kinds of work on energy analytics. We have like an McKinney project. The landscape around it is built on regenerative design principles. We have faculty that are involved with it. We have the elders that Indigenous elders that are part of our advisory circle, like picking the plant species that were there. And so we really try to bring that community together in ways that really bring sustainability to life, as opposed to, certifications are good, but they're a bit abstract, right? Whereas when we get people involved in projects, it really brings them to life. So, and we take the time at the front end of a project to really think about a compelling vision. What can this project do? And it's not about a LEED scorecard. It's really about thinking about holistic health, human health, ecological health. What can this do? How does that tie to the research mission that will occur of the particular faculty that is in that building? And so what is it that we can do that is a big idea around this building? And then we get into the practical things of having a good governance systems of, design standards and guidelines and, clear expectations about what we want from a project right from the get-go. And importantly, looking at the total cost of ownership as opposed to focusing on that narrow band of first costs and thinking about that. And that fundamentally changes the financial value of green buildings because you see them over their lifespan. And then I guess the last thing is that, it's great teamwork. All of these projects come together. They're the results of innovation and people working together. So that's our secret sauce of how we approach it on our campus.
To follow up on that idea of teamwork, do you believe that green building just appeals to leaders, or is this becoming more mainstream? How does CAGBC help that mainstream majority adopt green building?
Yeah, well, 3 million square meters of LEED certified space is phenomenal. It's wonderful. It speaks towards moving to mainstream. It still represents under 5% of total buildings in Canada. So we have a long ways to go still. And it's, and we're needing to do this work in increasingly challenging context.
Right.
As we're seeing with climate change occurring, challenges locally, challenges globally with respect to supply chains and other things. So in Canada, buildings are our third highest source of greenhouse gas emissions. We have tremendous opportunity. I think the council's done a really good job of producing reports that really show the possibilities of how the built environment can really help Canada reach its nationally determined contributions and its aspirations as under the commitments under the Paris Agreement. I think that they also have possibilities to help with the new commitment for biodiversity as well. It was just released following up on COP15 in Montreal, which is very, very exciting. you know, buildings are contributors to climate change. I think globally they represent close to 40% of greenhouse gas emissions. They're also about 40% in material extraction that goes into building them. That's a statistic we don't talk about enough. And then they're greatly impacted by climate change itself. So there's no silver bullet here that we can say, if we do this, that will solve the problem. People point to codes and so forth, and yeah, we need codes, but codes don't change fast enough. And in the end, it's people in behind that are making those decisions. I think that that it is this combination of advocacy, of education, and working at multiple levels across multiple sectors and agencies. That is that targeted work that the council's done a great job of doing and needs to keep doing. And eventually we reach tipping points in different parts of the sector. And I think a great example of that is within the Class A commercial real estate sector. Is that I would say a decade ago, who would have thought we would be where we are right now? And look at where we are. And it was multiple, it's internal and external forces, the different levers that caused that tipping point to occur. But in the space of time, it was quite rapid. And that's actually how tipping points work in ecological systems as well. So there's sort of an interesting model to think about there. But yeah, so now you won't see commercial Class A commercial office space in any kind of center in Canada that isn't LEED Platinum and WELL certified, and now going for net zero. So that's phenomenal. And so I think it's also then looking at, okay, what's the next sector that is close to that tipping point? I personally think it's in public sector, but then we also have other multi-unit residential sector is not, that's a farther away. And so I think we have to kind of the council needs to kind of keep thinking about those where can those tipping points occur. One thing I guess I'd like to see the council pursue is creating a space that and maybe supports to incent kind of that new cohort of early innovators. To thinking about what's that next frontier for the to advance the transformation of the built environment, and what supports could the council create in order to kind of help foster that and move it along. And for me, I really think a lot about regenerative design and resilience thinking, and it's a different approach. Right now we have a lot of technology focus, and it's we've got a lot of momentum there. But I actually think we need to start thinking about what is that emerging piece, and what supports might be needed there, and maybe some different models, because I think we need different disciplines around the table. We need biologists, we need climate scientists, we need social innovators, and to think about maybe different ways that we could approach thinking about the built environment. And anyway, so I just think there's this innovation opportunity, and I'd like to see the council, be thinking about what's that next thing, and how.
Do you think that's the focus then for the next 20 years?
I think that's a space that needs a support to start to kind of
evolution
around. Yeah. I think if I think about the next 20 years or what is kind of the urgent next piece for me, I guess I'm thinking about resilience. We're very, very focused on mitigation, driving down greenhouse gas emissions. We need to keep that focus. However, if we are not anticipating climate change and the impacts of climate change into our buildings, then all those mitigation efforts are going to go out the window when as the disruptions hit. And it's not if they're going to hit, they will hit. It's just in what order and what magnitude and so forth. So, and I'm going to be controversial here, and maybe Thomas won't like me for saying this, but that we can certify LEED projects in net zero carbon buildings that have not done a climate risk assessment and offer certification is, to me, it's no longer palatable. We cannot do this, because if we a net zero building that is not climate resilient is not a sustainable building. And so we have to think about resilient, low carbon built environments. We have to put the two of them together. We can't do one without the other. Resilience without mitigation is a problem, and mitigation without resilience is a problem. So to me, this is kind of the laser focus that we that the council needs to really put forward. And if we fail to do this, we do not build resilient, low carbon buildings and communities. We are putting people, societies, assets. We're putting them at risk, and that's not part of the goal, right? Our goal is to build healthy, resilient, and vibrant communities. So that's the missing piece that we need to bring up now, and it's coming up. And we've seen the national adaptation plan is coming to life in that. But I think there's some work to do in all of the resources and the certification tools and so forth on that.
I agree with you. It's a big opportunity, and we can't leave any missed opportunities behind. Yeah. One thing we know as we move forward to meet the demand of zero carbon buildings and retrofits is that we need to expand the green building workforce that we have. As both a leader and a woman in the green building sector and a past participant of our Women in Green Symposium, how do you think the sector could increase diversity?
So diversity it is a challenge that needs to be addressed. Women are still significantly underrepresented across this kind of broad multi-agency interprofessional community, and we are. It is also a sector that is predominantly white, and so I think addressing this, this has to occur again at different levels. It needs to be, I think leadership in addressing equity, diversity, and inclusion. It needs to occur within the individual professional associations and groups. There's some work and leadership to occur there, and I know many of those organizations are focusing in on that now. It needs to occur at the firm and the organizational level, and it also needs to occur within the CAGBC. And I think the CAGBC can play an important leadership role in setting the standard in terms of increasing diversity, looking across all its committees and task forces, looking at who is speaking, who is at the front of the room in the conferences, and within its staff complement, its own staff complement. I was quite proud when I was on the board that we did reach gender parity at one point. It was, and we need to kind of get back there and then sustain that. So we need diverse voices in green. And I think we have to think really broadly about diversity. We need different ages. We need different perspectives, right? And it's that diverse perspectives. We learn from one another. We bring in fresh ideas and new ideas, different ways of knowing, and we need that to reach our goal. And I guess another aspect that I've been thinking a lot about over the past few years is that we have, in general, across the sector, to me, there is an absence of Indigenous peoples in our sector. I think given our commitments to reconciliation, given the wisdom that Indigenous knowledge holders can help us, they offer so much wisdom with respect to understanding resilience, regeneration, reciprocity, relationality. These are all foundational pieces to sustainability. And so I wonder what we are missing. I wonder what we need to do to bring, and what we can do to bring Indigenous voices and Indigenous knowledge systems into this wonderful movement that is occurring. And I think that it will enrich us beyond what we can imagine. So, and then the leadership role, I think CAGBC can take the initiative, can take the leadership role in working on that. And that's a challenge to the council. So.
Great. Well, thank you, Joanne, for sharing this retrospective for us and inspiration for what we can do leading forward in the years to come. Thank you very much for sharing your time.
Yes, thank you, Marnie, for the opportunity.
Ensemble, we are building our way forward to a sustainable future.